Yuval Harari, the renowned author of *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind*, has released a new book titled Nexus. Below, we provide a chapter-by-chapter summary of the fundamental ideas presented in this work. With this summary, you'll gain a detailed understanding of the author's insights. Remember to support the author by purchasing his book. Let's begin. Chapter 1. In the first chapter of Nexus, titled What is Information?, Yuval Noah Harari explores the nature of information and its fundamental role in shaping history and human societies. Rather than focusing on a technical definition, Harari invites us to view information as the essential element connecting humans and forming the foundation of the social, political, and cultural networks that have shaped humanity. Harari begins by pointing out that defining fundamental concepts like information is challenging because they are the pillars on which other concepts are built. Just as physicists struggle to define what matter is, and biologists grapple with defining life, information, becoming increasingly relevant across disciplines, appears to be the most basic building block of the universe. However, this book does not delve into the philosophical or scientific complexities of information. Instead, it focuses on the historical and social role of information, how humans have used it to build societies and maintain cooperative networks throughout history. One of the key themes Harari introduces is what he calls the naive view of information. This view suggests that information is merely a reflection of reality and that accumulating more information brings societies closer to the truth. According to this perspective, information is a tool that, when used correctly, allows us to represent reality accurately, enhancing our understanding of the world. This belief has been a driving force behind the development of information technologies such as the internet, artificial intelligence, and big data systems. However, Harari critiques this view, arguing that information is rarely used with the primary goal of reflecting the truth. Instead, information plays a much more complex role, connecting people and building social networks. It is not always important whether what is communicated is true or false. What matters is that it enables people to collaborate, organize, and create shared realities. Harari uses historical examples to illustrate this point. For instance, during times of war, espionage networks often transmitted inaccurate information, but it served the purpose of connecting agents and facilitating military cooperation. This approach redefines our understanding of information. While the naive view suggests that error or misinformation are unfortunate deviations, Harari argues that lies, mistakes, and fantasies can be powerful forms of information because their effectiveness lies in their ability to connect and organize people. For example, major world religions, such as Christianity, are largely built on narratives that do not necessarily reflect precise historical facts, but have been incredibly effective in creating communities and lasting social networks. The Bible, for instance, contains numerous inaccuracies regarding history and science, yet its impact on human societies has been profound because it has united millions of people around a shared narrative. In this vein, Harari introduces the idea that information, rather than representing reality, primarily functions to put people into formation. Information organizes humans into structures that allow them to function collectively, even when the underlying data may be incorrect or illusory. Thus, the power of information lies not in its ability to describe the world, but in its capacity to organize collective action. One of the most notable examples of this dynamic is music. Harari notes that while music does not represent anything in terms of objective information, its power lies in its ability to emotionally connect people and synchronize their movements and feelings. Military marches, religious hymns, and sports chants do not need to represent reality. Their purpose is to unite people and strengthen group cohesion. In the field of biology, Harari suggests that biological information systems, such as DNA, do not need to represent reality literally either. DNA does not directly describe the environment in which organisms live, but it organizes cells in a way that enables life to exist. Similarly, in human society, biological information does not need to be a perfect reflection of reality to fulfill its purpose of creating complex and effective networks. Through these examples, Harari challenges the common idea that information automatically brings us closer to the truth. Instead, he argues that information can be dangerous precisely because its ability to create effective networks does not depend on its veracity. In fact, some of the most powerful networks in history, such as Nazism or Stalinism, were sustained by myths and lies that connected millions of people in highly organized and destructive movements. Harari concludes this opening chapter by proposing a new way of thinking about information, as a social nexus rather than a faithful representation of the world. The ability of human societies to organize and coordinate has not relied on the pursuit of truth, but on the ability to tell stories and build mythologies that unite people into complex and powerful networks, even when those stories are not necessarily true. In the following pages, Harari will explore how these information networks, based on myths and narratives, have shaped the course of human history and how the new era of artificial intelligence and technology presents unique challenges to how we manage and understand information. Chapter 2. In the second chapter of Nexus, titled Stories, Unlimited Connections, Yuval Noah Harari explores how humanity's ability to tell stories has enabled Homo sapiens to dominate the world and build vast networks of cooperation. Through this analysis, Harari delves into the power of stories to connect millions of people, transcending the limitations of direct personal cooperation. Harari reminds us that the reason sapiens rule the planet is not that we are inherently wiser than other species, but because we are the only animals capable of cooperating flexibly in large numbers. While other animals, like chimpanzees, show some flexibility in cooperation, or ants manage to cooperate in large groups, neither has established empires, religions, or trade networks. This kind of massive, flexible cooperation is exclusive to humans. Remarkably, there is no upper limit to the number of sapiens who can cooperate, as demonstrated by institutions such as the Catholic Church, with 1.4 billion members, China with a similar population, and the Global Trade Network, which connects nearly 8 billion people. This phenomenon is striking when we consider that humans cannot form intimate, lasting bonds with more than a few hundred individuals. Building deep relationships of trust and affection takes time and shared experiences. If our social networks relied solely on personal ties, they would remain very small. Harari uses the example of chimpanzees, whose communities usually consist of 20 to 60 members and rarely grow to 150 or 200. These numbers were likely similar among Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens, whose groups were limited to a few dozen individuals that seldom cooperated with other groups. However, around 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens began to exhibit an unprecedented ability to cooperate. This is evident in the emergence of trade networks between groups, shared artistic traditions, and the rapid spread of the species from Africa to the rest of the world. What enabled this cooperation among separate bands? According to Harari, the key lies in evolutionary changes in the sapiens' brain structure and linguistic abilities, allowing them to tell and believe in fictional stories. These stories replaced the need to personally know every member of the social network. Instead, it was enough for people to share the same story. A story can be known by billions, acting as a central connector with unlimited connections, allowing an unlimited number of people to link together. Harari provides several examples of how stories have built vast human networks. The 1.4 billion members of the Catholic Church are connected by the Bible and other key Christian narratives, while 1.4 billion Chinese citizens are united by stories of communism and Chinese nationalism. Likewise, the 8 billion people in the Global Trade Network are linked by stories about currencies, corporations, and brands. Even charismatic leaders who seem to unite millions of followers are examples of this same dynamic. While it may appear that a flesh and blood human connects these followers, what truly unites them is the carefully crafted story about the leader. Stalin understood this well when he scolded his son for trying to impress others by using his name. "You are not Stalin, not even I am Stalin. Stalin is Soviet power. Stalin is what appears in newspapers and portraits, not you, not even me." This logic applies to the world of brands as well. Coca-Cola, for example, has invested tens of billions of dollars in telling and retelling the story of its beverage. Through the constant repetition of this narrative, consumers have come to associate the drink with fun, happiness, and youth, even though, in reality, it is merely a mixture of sugary water. The power of stories lies in their ability to create what Harari calls intersubjective realities. While objective reality consists of things that exist independently of our perception, like mountains or asteroids, and subjective reality is made up of internal experiences, like pain or love. Intersubjective reality exists only to the extent that many people believe in it. Things like laws, gods, nations, and currencies are neither entirely objective nor entirely subjective. They depend on a collective agreement about their existence. For example, currencies have value only because many people agree that they do, and if everyone stopped believing in that agreement, the currencies would lose their value. Harari argues that these intersubjective realities have enabled Homo sapiens to build the largest and most powerful networks in the planet's history. These story-based networks not only gave sapiens an advantage over other animal species, but also over other humans, like the Neanderthals, who lacked the ability to weave such extensive networks. While Neanderthals lived in small, isolated groups, Homo sapiens could connect through shared stories about revered ancestors, totemic animals, and guardian spirits, forming tribes that united hundreds or even thousands of people. The power of stories manifests not only in times of conflict, where a tribe of 500 sapiens could easily defeat a group of 50 Neanderthals, but also in times of peace. Stories provided a kind of insurance that minimized risk by distributing it among many people. If one band faced drought or any other calamity, it could rely on other bands within its network for help. In summary, Harari shows how stories are the most powerful information technology we have ever developed. They have enabled us to build large-scale social, political, and economic networks far beyond what any other species has achieved. Stories have shaped human history by allowing us to cooperate flexibly and massively, a capability that has given Homo sapiens dominance over the planet. This chapter emphasizes the importance of narratives in organizing society and enabling large-scale cooperation. Stories not only connect people, but also create new realities that can be sources of immense power or tragic error. Chapter 3. In the third chapter of Nexus, titled Documents, The Bite of Paper Tigers, Yuval Noah Harari examines how written documents, one of the most crucial information technologies, have transformed the way humans organize societies and power structures. This chapter highlights the paradox of documents. Though they are fragile and seemingly harmless physical objects, paper tigers, they have the power to create social realities as fierce and dominant as any physical force. Harari begins by explaining that while stories were the first major information technology enabling mass human cooperation, written documents marked a second fundamental leap. While stories allowed humans to unite communities through shared myths and oral traditions, documents introduced a completely new way of organizing information and power on a large scale. With written documents, societies no longer had to rely on human memory or oral transmission to preserve agreements, laws, or property rights. Everything could now be recorded, stored, and, most importantly, verified independently of human testimony. The importance of written documents lies in their ability to create what Harari calls intersubjective realities. These are collective agreements that exist only as long as people believe in them, such as governments, currencies, or corporations. In oral societies, these realities were maintained through the repetition of stories and traditions. In literate societies, documents became the pillars that supported these intersubjective realities. A legal document, for example, did not just represent an agreement between two parties, it could create a new reality, such as property rights over a piece of land or the existence of a debt. Harari illustrates this idea with historical examples of how documents have shaped history. One of the earliest examples comes from ancient Mesopotamia, where clay tablets recorded commercial transactions, laws, and contracts. A simple error in one of these tablets, such as recording the wrong number of sheep delivered to a temple, could perpetuate an inaccuracy for centuries. Yet, even an incorrect document was treated as administrative truth. The power of documents lies not only in their ability to represent realities, but also in their capacity to impose them. Harari recounts how, in ancient Assyria, loan contracts were only considered extinguished when the document was killed, meaning the tablet recording the debt was destroyed. Even if the loan had been repaid, the debt persisted as long as the document existed. Harari points out that this phenomenon is not limited to ancient civilizations. In modern societies, official documents determine who owns land or who owes taxes, regardless of the actual situation on the ground. A document stating that you own a piece of land may carry more weight than the fact that your neighbors have been using that land for generations. However, The creation of these documentary realities also brought a new challenge: bureaucracy. As societies produced more and more documents, it became increasingly difficult to manage them. Harari narrates the case of Naram Tani, a Mesopotamian priestess who wrote to a relative requesting tablets proving her right to an inheritance. Without these documents, she could not defend her claim in court. Whether she ever recovered the tablets remains unknown, but the example highlights the challenges that arose from handling vast amounts of documents. If a document could not be located, it was almost as if it never existed. The rise of bureaucracy also brought a new form of power. In pre-literate societies, power rested with those who controlled stories: shamans, poets, and storytellers. In literate societies, power shifted to those who could read and write and who controlled archives and documents. Bureaucrats, scribes, and lawyers became key figures of power, not because they controlled physical force, but because they mastered the complexities of the documentary system. Harari notes that the term bureaucracy, meaning government by desk, originated in 18th century France, when the desk, or bureau, with its many drawers became the symbol of administrative power. The ability to categorize, archive, and retrieve documents became a crucial skill that conferred power to those who mastered it. Finally, Harari analyzes how modern bureaucracy, while efficient in many ways, can also alienate people. Documents and bureaucratic systems are often opaque and difficult for most people to understand. Ordinary citizens, though affected by decisions made in bureaucratic offices, often lack the knowledge to comprehend how those decisions are made or to navigate the complex administrative systems that govern their lives. This disconnect between the administrative center and the population fosters distrust toward governments and institutions. In summary, the third chapter of Nexus reveals how documents, those simple objects made of paper or clay, have powerfully shaped human societies by creating new intersubjective realities. From the earliest contracts in ancient Mesopotamia to modern bureaucratic systems, documents have transformed how humans cooperate and organize their lives. However, as Harari shows, this information technology also has a dark side, contributing to the creation of power structures that are difficult for those outside the system to control or understand. Chapter 4. In the fourth chapter of Nexus, titled Errors, The Fantasy of Infallibility, Yuval Noah Harari explores human nature regarding mistakes and the historical obsession with achieving some kind of infallible mechanism to avoid human errors. Harari argues that errors are an intrinsic part of the human condition, and history has been a continuous effort to correct them. However, over time, humanity has fantasized about creating superior mechanisms, like religions or, more recently, artificial intelligence, that are incapable of making mistakes. Harari begins by recalling the words of St. Augustine: "To err is human, but to persist in error is diabolical." This sentiment has permeated the structure of many mythologies and belief systems throughout history. In Christianity, human history is presented as a continuous attempt to correct the original sin committed by Adam and Eve. Similarly, in political ideologies like Marxism-Leninism, it is assumed that even the working class can be misled and lose sight of its own interests, necessitating a wise vanguard party to correct its errors. In bureaucracies, another type of information network, errors are also a constant concern. Major catastrophes, such as military defeats or financial crises, often lead to the formation of investigative commissions to determine what went wrong and how to prevent it from happening again. At this point, Harari introduces a paradox. For these self-correcting mechanisms to work, they must possess legitimacy. But if humans are fallible, how can we trust self-correcting systems created by them? This is where the fantasy of infallibility arises. The idea that there could exist a superior, error-free system to which we can turn to fix our mistakes. Throughout history, religions have fulfilled this role. Major world religions, such as Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism, claim that their ideas and rules were established by a superhuman, infallible authority. In theory, this protects them from the possibility of error and places them beyond human criticism. However, as Harari explains, these fantasies of infallibility have obvious limitations. Human institutions that adopt them often struggle to adapt and change when it becomes clear that their dogmas are flawed. In the modern context, Harari highlights how artificial intelligence, AI, has revived this old fantasy of infallibility. He mentions the example of Elon Musk, who in 2023 announced the creation of TruthGPT, an AI designed to seek ultimate truth and understand the nature of the universe. However, Harari warns that the idea of a technological mechanism capable of providing infallible answers is dangerous. Although religion is often seen today as an outdated concept, AI is becoming a new version of this age-old dream. The search for a technology capable of autonomously correcting human mistakes without errors. Yet blind faith in technology is not infallible. Harari points out that, just like religions, AI systems and algorithms are created by fallible humans and are therefore inevitably marked by the same errors and biases. Moreover, while these systems can adapt and learn from their mistakes, their ability to do so always depends on human design and the quality of the data they are fed. This opens a new Pandora's box. If we rely too heavily on these systems and they begin to make catastrophic errors, we may no longer have the control needed to correct them. Harari proposes that to avoid these dangers, it is essential to keep humans in the decision-making loop, even when technology seems capable of managing itself. The creation of human institutions capable of monitoring and correcting AI systems' mistakes will be essential to prevent large-scale disasters. Additionally, Harari argues that we must train AI systems to be aware of their own fallibility, a principle Socrates himself regarded as essential to achieving wisdom. The ability to say, "I don't know." Finally, Harari warns that while algorithms can be trained to recognize their own mistakes, humans cannot fully delegate responsibility to these machines. Technology, although powerful, is vulnerable to its own failures, and the consequences of these mistakes could be even more devastating than past human errors, such as witch hunts or Stalinist collectivization. In conclusion, Harari reminds us that the fantasy of an infallible system, whether in the form of religion or artificial intelligence, is a dangerous illusion. Errors are an inevitable part of any information network, and as long as human societies pursue this mirage of perfection, they risk repeating the same mistakes of the past, only amplified by the scale and power of modern technology. Chapter 5. In the 5th chapter of Nexus, titled Decisions, A Brief History of Democracy and Totalitarianism, Yuval Noah Harari examines how different political systems, such as democracy and totalitarianism, manage information and make decisions. What stands out in this chapter is Harari's focus on these systems not only as political structures, but also as information networks with distinct ways of operating. Harari begins by making a fundamental distinction between the two systems. In democracies, information flows through multiple channels, enabling open and diverse discussion. Power is distributed, and decision-making is often a collective process involving many voices and opinions. This creates constant feedback and self-corrective mechanisms, allowing institutions and citizens to question and rectify the government's mistakes. In contrast, information networks in totalitarian systems are highly centralized. Authority is concentrated in a central hub, where information is filtered before reaching the leaders. This setup enables swift, often ruthless decisions, but removes much of the feedback needed to correct errors. Totalitarian regimes, such as Stalin's Soviet Union or the Roman emperors, view information as a tool for control rather than deliberation or error correction. A key example of this difference can be seen in the flow of information during the Cold War. In the United States, a democratic country, the media and universities openly criticized military actions like the Vietnam War. This criticism divided American society and eroded its global image, but also demonstrated democracy's capacity for self-correction. Meanwhile, in the Soviet Union, the media remained silent about the atrocities committed by its army in Afghanistan, limiting the regime's reputational damage. In totalitarian systems, controlling information can maintain a facade of stability, but it does so at the expense of truth and justice. Harari also highlights how totalitarianism seeks to assume the infallibility of its leaders. Dictators like Stalin and Hitler were portrayed as infallible geniuses, and criticizing their decisions was regarded as treason. This presumption of infallibility is a cornerstone of totalitarianism, suppressing any attempt at self-correction. In contrast, democracies acknowledge that everyone, including the government, is fallible, justifying the need for checks and balances, such as the separation of powers, freedom of the press, and regular elections. However, Harari warns that while self-corrective mechanisms are essential in democracies, they also come at a cost. These mechanisms can generate doubts, conflicts, and disagreements that may undermine social order. History has shown that the pursuit of truth can destabilize even the most oppressive societies, but it has also led to chaos and greater oppression. Harari argues that democracy is a delicate balance between truth and order, where error correction is vital but must be carefully managed to avoid destabilizing the very structure of society. Finally, Harari points out that although democracies have historically been more effective at handling large amounts of information and correcting mistakes, the rise of new information technologies, such as artificial intelligence, poses a new challenge. Modern technologies are designed to process vast volumes of data centrally, which could shift the balance in favor of totalitarian regimes. AI does not suffer from human limitations in processing information. In fact, the more data it handles, the better it performs. This could lead to more efficient totalitarian systems, where centralized control of information becomes more feasible than ever. In summary, this chapter explores the history of democracy and totalitarianism through the lens of information networks. While democracies rely on information distribution and error correction, totalitarian regimes centralize information and suppress criticism. Harari concludes that although democracies have proven to be more flexible and resilient, new technologies could pose a significant risk if not properly managed, potentially enabling the rise of more powerful forms of totalitarian control than ever before. Chapter 6. In the 6th chapter of Nexus, titled New Members, How Computers Are Different from Printing Presses, Yuval Noah Harari explores the revolutionary impact that computers have had on information networks, highlighting how they differ from earlier technologies like the printing press. Harari argues that while technologies such as printing presses, clay tablets, or radio revolutionized human communication, they did not introduce new types of members into information networks. These technologies merely connected human members, but the participants in the network remained exclusively human. Computers, on the other hand, represent an evolutionary leap in these networks. For the first time in history, we are not just connecting humans with better technology. We are adding new non-human members to the information network. Computers not only transmit information, but can also make decisions and generate new ideas independently. This means they act autonomously within the network, contributing with their own form of thought. Harari illustrates this idea with the example of computers now making financial and legal decisions faster and more accurately than humans, a development that, he suggests, is just the beginning of a much larger transformation. This chapter delves into how computers, with their ability to create and process information independently, may eventually hold more power than humans. For tens of thousands of years, humanity has dominated the world by using language to build intersubjective realities, such as laws or currencies. But now, computers could shift this balance of power, given their ability to process vast amounts of information far more efficiently and intricately than any human. Harari suggests that in the near future, computers might dominate key sectors of the economy, politics, and culture, making decisions and inventing tools beyond human comprehension. Moreover, Harari warns of the potentially dangerous implications of this new reality. Although early computers were limited to simple mathematical calculations, today's machines are learning to handle linguistic complexities, generating narratives, music, images, and even code without human intervention. As these machines continue to evolve, they could take control of critical parts of our societies, such as financial markets, legal systems, or cultural discourse, in ways that humans may no longer understand or manage. One of the most important points Harari makes is the difference between previous networks, where humans were always an essential link, and new computer networks, which can operate entirely without human involvement. For example, one computer could generate a fake news article, and another computer could detect and block it, all without any human intervention. This development challenges humanity's ability to oversee and manage systems that function autonomously, raising fundamental questions about the future of human control over these information networks. In summary, Harari emphasizes that while the printing press and other past technologies connected people, computers are creating networks where they themselves are active members. This shift has the potential to transform not only the structure of our societies, but also the balance of power within them, as computers begin to make decisions that humans cannot understand or anticipate. Chapter 7. In the 7th chapter of Nexus, titled Relentless, The network is always on. Yuval Noah Harari explores the implications of an interconnected world where computer networks operate 24/7, year-round. This concept of an uninterrupted network contrasts sharply with the biological nature of human beings who function according to cyclical rhythms. We rest, sleep, and need disconnection to regenerate physically and mentally. However, in the realm of machines, there is no room for rest. The computer network never sleeps. Humanity, accustomed to functioning within biological and social cycles, now faces a world where these norms are being surpassed. Traditionally, humans operated within defined time frames. Job interviews ended, stock markets closed, and holidays offered moments of respite. Yet computer networks do not adhere to these biological cycles. They can remain active all the time, pushing human societies toward a new reality where disconnection becomes increasingly difficult. This reality of permanent connectivity offers certain benefits. Harari points out that in fields like healthcare, continuous monitoring could improve quality of life, detecting illnesses before they become serious or ensuring that treatments are properly followed. However, the same mechanism can have destructive effects in other contexts, such as in totalitarian states, where citizens are constantly watched and any act of dissent can be swiftly suppressed. A central concern in this chapter is humanity's vulnerability within a system that allows no rest. The human body and mind require breaks. Without the chance to disconnect and recover, the organism risks collapse. But how can we stop a computer network that never shuts down? Harari argues that to prevent these relentless networks from taking total control of society, it is essential to find ways to introduce pauses, not only to safeguard our health and well-being, but also to correct the inevitable errors that arise within these implacable systems. While computer networks are powerful and capable of analyzing vast amounts of data, they are not infallible. They make mistakes, and the problem is that these errors can accumulate at an alarming rate, outpacing human capacity to identify and correct them. The network can collect unprecedented amounts of data about us, track every move, and detect patterns within that ocean of information. However, the fact that the network can gather so much data does not mean it always understands the world accurately. Harari warns that a system of total surveillance could create a distorted view of the world and humanity. Rather than uncovering the truth about reality and ourselves, the network might impose a new global order based on incorrect or misinterpreted data, profoundly affecting our freedom and autonomy. A crucial aspect of this chapter is the impact of constant surveillance on human life. Throughout history, humans have been monitored by others, family members, friends, neighbors, and governments. However, there has always been some level of privacy. New technologies now threaten to eliminate these personal spaces entirely. Constant scrutiny, driven by algorithms that evaluate and categorize every interaction, could lead to an extremely stressful society where every word and action is tracked and judged. Harari concludes that networks that never rest not only affect daily life, but also pose an existential challenge to human societies. If these networks continue evolving at their current pace without restraint, we could lose our ability to disconnect, relax, and, most importantly, reflect and correct mistakes. Pauses are not just a biological necessity. They are imperative for our mental health and the proper functioning of our societies. Ultimately, this chapter of Nexus serves as a warning about the dangers of a hyper-connected and ever-watched world. While computer networks may offer certain benefits, their relentlessness can also erode the very foundations of human life as we know it. Harari suggests that the task of our generation will be to find a way to balance the benefits of these networks with the fundamental human need for disconnection and rest. Chapter 8. In the 8th chapter of Nexus, titled Fallible, the network is often wrong, Yuval Noah Harari continues his exploration of 21st century information networks, emphasizing the limitations and inherent errors within the systems that supposedly guide us toward truth and order. The chapter opens with a powerful reference to the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a harrowing account of the Soviet labor camps and the surveillance system that sustained them. Harari uses this work as an analogy to illustrate how information networks not only fail but also perpetuate systems of power and control based on fiction rather than truth. A chilling example is the arrest of a factory director who was the first to stop clapping during an extended ovation for Stalin, demonstrating how surveillance systems used information more to enforce order than to uncover the truth. Harari warns that modern information networks hold the same potential for distortion. Harari highlights how information systems, such as mass surveillance algorithms and social media networks, often confuse order with truth. These networks, he argues, are not necessarily designed to discover reality, but to impose narratives that sustain power. A total surveillance system could create a distorted view of human behavior, much like in Solzhenitsyn's time, where loyalty was not genuine but driven by fear of being deemed disloyal. The chapter also examines how modern computational networks, despite their technological sophistication, repeat this pattern of error. Harari warns that algorithms gathering vast amounts of human data can develop fundamentally flawed models of the world. These models, riddled with biases and misunderstandings, can still wield the power to influence critical decisions in our lives. He cites the example of social credit systems, which rank individuals based on arbitrary criteria that, while not rooted in biological categories like racism, are just as dangerous. The fallibility of computational networks lies not only in occasional errors, but in their inability to balance truth with order effectively. Just like human networks in the past, these systems can create powerful computational myths, fictional narratives that override reality and could trigger historical calamities similar to the witch hunts in early modern Europe or Stalin's collectivization. Harari cautions that computer networks could cause even greater disasters if given too much power without proper oversight. A key theme in the chapter is the need for mechanisms to correct these networks' errors. Harari proposes that we train algorithms to recognize their own fallibility, applying a kind of Socratic doubt to artificial intelligence. Algorithms must learn to say "I don't know," request feedback, and admit mistakes. While engineers are already making progress in this area, Harari emphasizes that humans must remain actively involved in overseeing and correcting these systems. The chapter concludes with a thought-provoking question. Do modern societies have the political will to confront these challenges? Harari argues that the creation of computational networks is neither inherently good nor bad, but undeniably alien in nature. As such, we need institutions capable of managing both human and computational errors, which are radically different from those we are used to. Without these institutions, we risk falling under the control of networks that, while powerful, misunderstand the world and ourselves profoundly. In summary, this chapter of Nexus offers a deep reflection on the dangers of blindly trusting information networks and algorithms. While they can be powerful tools, they are also fallible and require constant monitoring and correction to prevent their errors from becoming large-scale catastrophes. Harari's warning is clear. If we fail to recognize and address the shortcomings of our networks, we may be building a future ruled by computational fictions that strip us of our freedom and understanding of reality. Chapter 9. In the 9th chapter of Nexus, titled Democracies, Can We Still Hold a Conversation? Yuval Noah Harari delves into one of the central challenges facing modern societies: the erosion of the ability to hold meaningful conversations within increasingly fragmented democracies. In a world where digital networks have reshaped the flow of information and algorithms play a critical role in mediating what we see, hear, and discuss, Harari asks whether democracies, as we know them, can survive this technological challenge. One key point Harari emphasizes is how information technology has shifted from being a tool that facilitated democratic participation to becoming an obstacle to it. Historically, large-scale democracy was nearly impossible due to technological limitations. People could not communicate in real time across vast distances. Paradoxically, today we face the opposite situation. Democracies risk collapsing because technology has advanced so much that it threatens to undermine the foundations of public conversation. According to Harari, algorithms have the potential to crush reasoned arguments and foster hatred and confusion, making healthy and constructive public discussion almost impossible. This breakdown is evident in the political landscape of the United States, where Democrats and Republicans can no longer agree on basic facts, such as the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. Instead of cooperating to solve common problems, antagonism has escalated to the point where civil conversations are nearly impossible. This radicalization is not unique to the United States. It is occurring in democracies worldwide, from the Philippines to Brazil. Harari notes that it is unclear what is causing this collapse in democratic information networks. While many blame ideological divides, these rifts do not seem deeper than those of previous generations. In the 1960s, for example, the United States was divided by intense ideological conflicts over civil rights, the Vietnam War, and the sexual revolution. Yet, despite these tensions, Democrats and Republicans could still work together and accept election results. What, then, has changed today? One prominent theory points to the role of social media and algorithms. While these factors have undoubtedly contributed to polarization, Harari suggests that additional factors must be at play to explain why democratic conversation has become so dysfunctional. Today's information landscape is so complex and mediated by algorithmic decisions that even experts struggle to answer basic political questions, such as, why are we fighting? Given this situation, Harari warns that if we fail to understand what is broken and how to fix it, major democracies may not survive in the technological age. If algorithms and computer networks take over public discourse and distort it beyond repair, what political system will prevail in the future? Harari leaves open the possibility that the world could fall under the control of totalitarian regimes. However, he also suggests that these regimes would struggle to fully control the networks they depend on. The challenge outlined in this chapter is not only technological but also profoundly political. Harari stresses that democracies must find ways to regulate these new technologies to preserve public conversation. While he offers no easy solutions, he emphasizes that any effort to save democracies must focus on restoring the ability of citizens to engage in meaningful and respectful dialogue, something that seems increasingly difficult in a world overwhelmed by distorted information and heightened emotions. In summary, Chapter 9 of Nexus offers a profound reflection on the future of democracy in the information age. Harari warns that democracies cannot survive unless we manage to control the digital networks and algorithms that now govern much of our interactions. The central question remains whether, amidst this informational chaos, humans will be able to sustain conversations that keep the essence of democracy alive. Chapter 10. In the 10th chapter of Nexus, titled Totalitarianism, All Power to the Algorithms? Yuval Noah Harari delves into the dark potential of new technologies in the hands of totalitarian regimes. Harari explores how artificial intelligence and advanced algorithms could shift the balance of power in favor of autocrats, making them more effective and dangerous than ever. In the past, information technology was insufficient to sustain large democracies or totalitarian regimes. The 20th century totalitarian regimes, like Stalin's, attempted to centralize all information in one place, but the sheer volume of data was overwhelming, leading to costly errors. These systems lacked effective self-correction mechanisms, making them vulnerable. Democracies, by contrast, distributed information across multiple institutions, allowing for better data management and the ability to correct errors when they arose. However, in the age of algorithms and machine learning, the rules of the game have changed. Algorithms thrive on vast amounts of data, centralizing information and decision-making in a single point. This ability to process massive datasets without the cognitive limitations of humans may be exactly what totalitarian regimes have been waiting for. Unlike the past, where inefficiencies and errors were inevitable, new algorithms can control and process information on a scale unimaginable to humans, giving these regimes a decisive advantage. Harari highlights the example of tech giants like Google, Facebook, and Amazon, which have monopolized their markets partly due to the power that algorithms grant them. In traditional industries, size is not always a decisive advantage, but in the information economy, access to large volumes of data enables the training of ever more effective algorithms, creating an unstoppable cycle of growth and control. Similarly, in totalitarian regimes, access to vast amounts of data could make centralized governments more efficient, suppressing internal resistance and controlling populations with unprecedented precision. Harari presents the terrifying possibility of a future where totalitarian regimes not only survive but thrive with the help of artificial intelligence. The concentration of power in algorithms could lead to systems of total surveillance where resistance becomes nearly impossible. While some view technologies like blockchain as a defense against such trends, Harari warns that these solutions are not foolproof. In a blockchain system, if a government controls 51% of the accounts, it could rewrite not only the present but also the past. Dictators have always desired the power to change history, and in the age of algorithms, they might achieve it with the push of a button. Harari also points out a crucial dilemma for dictators. If they rely too heavily on algorithms, they risk becoming puppets of the very technology they created. An algorithm does not need to be conscious to accumulate power and manipulate people. The control of all information by a single algorithm could lead to a scenario where even the most powerful leaders lose control of their own governments. Despite these dangers, Harari argues that democracies, though harder to govern during crises due to their distributed nature, still possess a key advantage: the ability to self-correct. Totalitarian regimes, by their very nature, lack such corrective mechanisms and, by placing their faith in supposedly infallible intelligence, may be setting themselves up for disaster. In summary, this chapter of Nexus raises the unsettling question of whether artificial intelligence will tip the scales in favor of totalitarian regimes. Dictators might find in algorithms the perfect tool to consolidate power and eliminate dissent, but at the risk of losing control over their own regimes. Meanwhile, democracies must find ways to adapt and resist in a world where technology is redefining the rules of power. Chapter 11. In the 11th chapter of Nexus, titled The Silicon Curtain, Global Empire or Global Fragmentation, Yuval Noah Harari explores a scenario in which the digital world fractures into rival blocks, dividing humanity into incompatible technological spheres. Harari warns of the emergence of a new, invisible barrier, the Silicon Curtain, that threatens to separate nations and citizens into disconnected digital empires, much like the Iron Curtain divided the world during the Cold War, but this time along technological rather than ideological lines. In this new reality, not only will technologies differ, but social norms, cultures, and systems of governance could also diverge drastically. Harari explains that digital powers like China and the United States are already building their own self-contained technological ecosystems. China has developed its own apps and platforms, such as WeChat, Baidu, and Alibaba, while Western companies like Google, Facebook, and Amazon dominate elsewhere. These are not mere imitations of Western technologies, but fundamentally distinct in their structure, goals, and regulations. Harari's primary concern is that the Silicon Curtain will create not just technological incompatibility but also irreconcilable societal differences. The algorithms governing daily life and information flows would align closely with the political values and objectives of each bloc, resulting in radically different worldviews within these digital empires. This divergence could render meaningful communication between individuals across these spheres nearly impossible. For instance, a person living within China's digital ecosystem might experience a completely different reality from someone in the Western system, influencing everything from education to politics to daily life. This fragmentation would create an unprecedented rupture in shared human experience. Harari examines the implications of this fragmentation for global cooperation, especially concerning shared challenges such as climate change or regulating dangerous technologies like artificial intelligence, AI. A humanity divided into hostile digital empires would struggle to collaborate effectively on these critical issues. Even worse, this type of division could heighten international tensions and increase the likelihood of armed conflict. If digital empires cannot communicate, they may lose the ability to negotiate key agreements, such as nuclear arms control or pandemic responses. Harari also raises the concern that the concentration of power within these digital empires could lead to a new form of data colonialism. Technologically advanced countries could dominate and exploit poorer nations, trapping them in dependence on data flows controlled by the digital empires. This exploitation would mirror historical colonialism, where industrial powers extracted resources from colonies. Only now, the resources are not physical but digital, with data being harvested and processed for the benefit of the imperial center. On a more personal level, the Silicon Curtain could lead to the creation of information cocoons, where individuals become trapped inside carefully curated bubbles of data, manipulated by the algorithms governing their lives. Within these cocoons, people would experience a filtered reality designed to reinforce existing beliefs and manipulate emotions. Harari warns that this could erode people's ability to maintain a shared understanding of reality, further fragmenting societies worldwide. However, Harari also presents the possibility that, instead of global fragmentation, we might see the rise of a global empire controlled by one or more of these digital superpowers. In this scenario, powerful tech companies and the governments backing them could exert total control over global information flows and digital economies, consolidating power in ways that would surpass even the British or Soviet empires at their peak. This global empire would impose its will on the world, controlling information, finance, and ultimately political decisions in all countries within its sphere of influence. Despite these ominous scenarios, Harari does not see this future as inevitable. He argues that there is still time for humanity to make choices that could prevent such dystopian outcomes. To do so, he emphasizes the importance of fostering global cooperation on the regulation of AI and emerging technologies, something that will only be possible if nations can overcome their differences and find ways to work together. In conclusion, the Silicon Curtain is a warning about the potential for global fragmentation through new digital technologies. Harari urges leaders and citizens worldwide to recognize the dangers posed by these divisions and take proactive steps to prevent humanity from splintering into digital empires incapable of communicating with one another. Only through cooperation and international regulation, Harari argues, can we avoid a future where technology divides humanity into rival, irreconcilable blocks.